Don't get too close. Stay away. Stay away. You will hurt her.
I'm trying not to.
Just like the others. Like the others. Just like her.
Who's her?
Remember.
I'm trying. Doom, baby, Walter, baby, wake up, baby. Come on, we got a show to do, baby. I mean, we literally just got started, baby, and you're already drifting off. I don't know what's going on today, baby. Eshy, I need them notes, baby. Come on. All right, you got this, Doom? All right.
Welcome to your worst nightmare. There is no escape. There is nowhere to hide. You are in my control now. Welcome to hell, motherfuckers.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Let's Talk About Horror, the horror podcast where I talk about any and everything related to the genre. And your boy is back, and if you have not followed me yet on any social medias, it is Walterdoom on Instagram, Walterdoom1 on Twitter, and Walterdoom on everything else. So with all that being said, we are now about to get into our first segment called The Cut. For the cut, we are going to talk about Kiki Palmer and how she is teaming up with Jordan Peele in the Universal movie that he's going to create. So, as you guys know, Jordan Peele has a multi-year deal with Universal where he's going to create like mini movies. One of them being like one of the Universal Monster movies. We have no idea what movie he's going to work on yet. But this news came out a couple of weeks ago that I've read, and it said that Kiki Palmer is going to join Jordan Peele's team in the Universal movie that he's going to create. The movie is going to come out, tentatively speaking, July 22nd of 2022. No details about like the plot or anything about the movie is being released. Everything is pretty much close-knit and tight-wrapped. But one thing that is being rumored, which is very interesting, is that Daniel Kaluuya, who just recently won a Golden Globe for his role in Jesus and the Black Messiah, which is an excellent movie, by the way. I know we're a horror channel, but I think this is a movie that a lot of people should check out because it talks about the real life experience of the Black Panthers and how the government was really trying to conspire against the group and try to make it seem like they're a big terrorist group when they technically really weren't. They were just trying to like be an equal rights group, but yeah, they were doing more teachings of like Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey and what have you. But either way, like, they were trying to do something better for the Black community more than what the government is really doing for it right now, honestly speaking. But yeah, this should be very interesting because Jordan Peele is set to direct and write the screenplay, which I think this is going to be the first written and directed screenplay he's done since Us. I know he's done other projects, but he's only an executive producer for those. But this is going to be an actual Jordan Peele movie. I believe he did not write Candyman, or he may have wrote Candyman that's supposed to come out, but he's not directing it. This is going to be a movie that he's writing and directing. So I'm really interested in seeing like what this movie is going to be about, what kind of social commentary he's going to make, because we all know right now that Jordan Peele is the social commentator horror guy, honestly speaking. I mean, that's no doubt about it. But he's going to have Daniel Kaluuya back, teaming up with him. And I kind of like that tandem because it's almost like Quentin Tarantino and Brad Pitt, whenever they get together for a movie, it's always like gold and whatever. At least for me, it feels like gold. Or like Tarantino and Eli Roth. Eli Roth. I know I'm using Tarantino way too much right now, but it it's the only tandem I can really think of like that is a good team together. Another good duo I would have to probably say is like Tim Burton and Johnny Depp. I do like their movies together. Like how Tim Burton has Johnny Depp in Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber. I really thought that was a good film. Honestly speaking, I mean that's one of my favorites. Musical horror, by the way, a horror slasher film for anybody that hasn't seen it before. Definitely, it's worth the watch if you haven't watched it before. If you don't mind a little singing and dancing, well, there's not much dancing in it, but definitely it's one thing to watch for. Now, the one thing I want to touch base is that Kiki Palmer. Now, for maybe a lot of us who watch Kiki Palmer, we wouldn't associate Kiki Palmer with horror necessarily. But honestly speaking, Kiki Palmer is kind of like had her feet wet into the horror world. Now, she only had like minor roles, which is like, well, not really a minor role, but she had minor participation, I should say, in the horror realm. Some of her accolades come in Scream Queen when she played Zayday Williams. And I used to watch that show a lot. I love Scream Queens. I love both seasons 1 and 2. Especially when they were fighting against the Red Devil. That season, I feel like it was a season that I felt like Scream should have been, which is another series that she has participated in. She was in the 3rd season of the Scream Resurrection series where she played Kim. Again, I don't really remember much of her role in the Scream series. I do remember her role in Scream Queens because that was just one of my favorite shows to watch, honestly. And I believe it's on Hulu if you haven't checked it out before. Yeah, but when she played Zayday, Zayday was the smart. She had black intelligence in a horror movie. There's certain things black people wouldn't do that white people would do in horror movies, which is always the running gag and everything. But at the end of the day, she still is like, ends up being a victim. But I believe she doesn't die. Well, she doesn't die, obviously, because she ends up being on season 2 anyway. But, yeah, she was always an entertaining character to watch. She also had her little ghetto moments. Obviously, I don't know why we always have to make black people ghetto and everything, or or even just show that they're black by just making them as outrageous as possible. Like, yeah, I'm from the hood. Like, yeah, we get it. You're black. You love hip hop. Sure. Thank you. We really don't need the extras, but I don't know, that's just the way characters are written. I feel like black characters need to be written a little bit different in the coming years. I feel like we are in a good shift because Scream Queens came out, I believe, if I can remember off the top of my head, it was like early 2010s. I don't want to give it a specific date because I really can't remember exactly when, but I believe it was either late 2000s or early 2010s, but I believe it's more early 2010s than anything else. For our next story that I want to talk about for the cut is Ari Aster has a new project starring Joaquin Phoenix, and it's going to be backed by the production of A24, where Ari Aster got his directorial notoriety from, which is Hereditary and Midsommar. The plot of this movie is also tightly knit, tightly under wraps. Nothing really has been given out. The plot is being described as an intimate, decade-spanning portrait of one of the most successful entrepreneurs of all time. First person I think of is Nikola Tesla, and I believe I heard somewhere, I can't remember where, that possibly this is going to be a story about Nikola Tesla, but I don't want to say it is or it is not because, again, this is just rumors that I have heard, and this project is being really closely tight-knit on information that's being given out. And I'm pretty sure, we won't really hear anything until this movie comes out. Now, Joaquin Phoenix is working on a movie right now called Kit Bag. And I believe this film probably won't be worked on until he's actually done with that project. So when this project is going to get released, we're looking at like 2023 or 2024. Either way, we're getting a new Ari Aster film, and it is going to star Joaquin Phoenix. And by the way, this is probably like a big win for Ari Aster anyway. I mean, he's had great actors and actresses come through on his films like Toni Collette, Florence Pugh, and just to name a couple of people that just really participated in his films. But he's getting an A-lister like Joaquin Phoenix. Now, I'm going to tell you this. If nobody has heard of Ari Aster before, they will hear of Ari Aster now. And this is a big move for horror in general. Because if this turns out to be like a horror movie, whether it's psychological or others, this is a good thing for the horror realm because they got Joaquin Phoenix in the film. And Joaquin Phoenix doesn't go on any film. Let's be honest. I mean, his best films that I've seen with him in it, I haven't seen many of them, but I know he does good work. But the films I've seen him in have always been good. Joker, Her, 8mm, and Gladiator. I'm just saying, those movies alone should tell you how great of an actor he really is. And there's probably some roles, I mean, because no one is perfect. We're all humans, you know. I'm not saying like Joaquin Phoenix is the greatest actor of all time. No, definitely not. But I'm saying like some of the roles he takes part in are very good and calculated roles to where he always gives out an outstanding performance. And for our last segment of the day, we're going to talk about Starz and Lionsgate striking a multi-year deal for the platform. So this came out from the Hollywood Reporter that Starz has just struck a deal with Lionsgate, and they are going to move a lot of Lionsgate's films onto their platform. It reads as this: Lionsgate is looking to give Starz a bigger movie streaming bundle by signing a multi-year theatrical output agreement with its premium subscription platform for Lionsgate and Summit label films. The report continues, as part of the deal, Starz will get an exclusive first window of Lionsgate's film when the current distribution agreement with Hulu expires at the end of 2021. And Summit label films will land on Starz when the current deal with HBO through to the end of 2022 expires. All right, so what does this mean? It means like a lot of like Lionsgate's film, like Saw, like a lot of Eli Roth films that are on the platform, they're going to get moved to Starz. Is this going to perpetuate the streaming wars that is currently happening? Yes, it is. Right now, we all know that Paramount Plus just got released, and Paramount Plus has released their own bit of bundle packs and movies that are from that production company. So a lot of like MTV, Nickelodeon, BT movies, television shows are being showcased on that platform. I, for one, if like you, humble listeners that are listening to this, am tired of this streaming wars. Like, I remember where we used to only have to worry about 2 to 3 platforms: Amazon, Hulu, and Netflix. Now it seems like because like Disney Plus became a thing, and a lot of companies are now seeing that it's probably better that they could make their own streaming service and make their own money from their movies by showcasing the movies themselves. We are definitely in a time where like we have to choose. This is almost like as bad as cable. Like, I'm not a cable person. I haven't had cable for many years. And the first thing I think about like right now with this whole streaming war is that it just feels like now we're building to the point where like everything is almost like a cable bill. Right now, if you wanted to get Paramount Plus, it's going to cost like $5.99 if you do the promotion deal before the 31st. But other than that, it's going to be $9.99 per month, which is not bad. But when you add it with like everything else that you have, we're talking about Netflix, which now is like $16.99, I believe, per month. We have Hulu. If you paired it up with all your Disney bundles, is now like, if well, let's just assume you're pairing it with like the Disney bundle. All that is $12.99 per month. That's already $28 right there. Then we're talking about HBO Max. Now, if you don't have the promo for HBO Max, we're talking about another $14. We're talking about another $32 going into that. Then we have Amazon. If you are an Amazon Prime user, subscriber, whatever, we're talking about $12.99. That's $44 right there. Then we're trying to add Peacock, Paramount, and soon Stars. And it just becomes out of control. Like, where do we draw the line as a consumer? Where do we draw the line with what is being put out there to us? Where do we draw a line with these streaming services? I don't know what you guys are going to do, but definitely I wouldn't subscribe to every one of them, because since I'm pretty much like a content creator, quote unquote, I really don't care to be called that, and I really don't care to be social media famous, by the way. You know, I just rather enjoy making art for you guys, and this is what I feel like this podcasting is. It's just art for me, you know. But for you guys, if you guys are like me, where you have limited hours within the day to do whatever you want to do and get done, you probably don't want to subscribe to all these streaming services. Honestly speaking, like, what are you going to get out of it? You know, besides another bill. And if you are a person that has like one of those bigger online TV streaming services like YouTube TV, Sling, or anything else, that's just another bill added onto like the streaming service bill that you already have. So I don't want to be like someone talking financials with you guys, but I know personally for me, I know I got a lot of streaming services myself, and I am in a war of picking and choosing which ones I want to keep. I mean, personally speaking, I mean, I use more Amazon, HBO, and YouTube more than anything else, and I'm not talking about YouTube TV. I'm talking about just regular YouTube. It definitely does bring the idea of who are you going to run with? Who do you feel more comfortable with? I mean, if you're more of a Disney person, I would say stick with the Disney bundle. But honestly, who's really like paying for all these services? Honestly, don't we all just give out our username and password to friends and family and they get to watch for free? I mean, don't we all just like trade off and just be like, hey, you know, I got this, you know, if you got that, you know, send that to me, you know. I mean, there's going to be a lot of crackhead deals going down. I feel like that's what's going to happen. Like, I swear, it's like somebody is literally going to suck dick just to get a Netflix account. Like, oh my God. But, yeah, that's just my personal thoughts about the streaming wars. Whatever you guys want to choose, I'm just trying to put the information out there for you guys. Lionsgate is one of my favorite companies. Besides, I wouldn't say it's my top favorite company, but it is definitely one of my favorite because it is the house of Saw and it is the house of Eli Roth in all those Hostel movies. But it's still not like an A24, or sad to say, I do like Blumhouse. I mean, who doesn't like Blumhouse? Even though Blumhouse is very formulaic with their films, Blumhouse is still like one of the top horror companies out there. I mean, let's just be honest, you know. And I do love what Jordan Peele is doing with Monkey Paw and everything. I really don't necessarily see Monkey Paw more like the Blumhouses or the A24s necessarily, but it is, if we want to like put it up there with those type of companies. But other than that, I mean, right now, you guys, I am going to go ahead and take my first break for the show. When I come back, I am going to talk about a little bit about Skid Row for a moment and just touch bases on homelessness. If you guys ever watched the Cecil Hotel docuseries, we're going to talk about that. But other than that, like you shouldn't say in a scary movie, I'll be right back. So recently I finished watching the Cecil Hotel docuseries on Netflix, and what I found interesting about this whole thing is just not only the mystery about the possible murder of Elisa Lam, but just the whole background and how they focus on the area of Skid Row and everything surrounding it. So if anybody has never been to Los Angeles before, we all know that Los Angeles is usually like being praised for being Hollywood, being so glamorous. It never rains in Southern California. I mean, I know because I live in LA. I rep it till I die. As you guys know, this is where I'm from and what have you. You know, no need to lie about where I'm at. Thing is that with Los Angeles, there is a dark side. And for anybody that has ever been here or visited or lived here before, we know there is a dark side, which is homelessness, which is a huge problem in Los Angeles. And homelessness could range from like people just losing their jobs, having nowhere to go, people being released from jail, and they're being put out just like anywhere to just stay and what have you, to like people on drugs and alcohol, and just countless stories of why people are homeless on the streets. Now, Skid Row is definitely not a street necessarily, but it's definitely a community in downtown, and it's been around for many years. When I was young, I remember Skid Row for like just having a whole lot of homeless people. I used to go to like this outlet market called the Alley, and not too far from the Alley is pretty much Skid Row, and Skid Row is basically like just a community of just homeless people in general. In this area of downtown, you will see a lot of homeless people. And before the Staples Center was really built, downtown was literally the destination of just being a Skid Row district. I remember as a kid, like no one really fucked with downtown at all. And it's amazing that ever since the Staples Center and LA Live, they got built, downtown has revamped itself and made itself a destination spot where people could actually hang out. I mean, before downtown became like the destination spot, the cool spot was really just to hang around Hollywood or Santa Monica. But even with Santa Monica has its own homeless population that is very much a problem too. But nothing was even more problematic than downtown Los Angeles in the Skid Row area. So according to like a report that I read, there is at least 50 to 100,000 people living on Skid Row. And just based on those many reasons that I mentioned earlier. So for right now, I'm going to read you guys a article that I read from NPR that I found that was pretty interesting because it kind of sticks to the idea about what Skid Row is all about and just like some of the things that happens in Skid Row. The article is called Women on LA Skid Row to Tell Their Story Through the Anger, Despair on Their Faces. To capture the specific horror of Los Angeles homeless crisis, one just needs to enter the 50-block perimeter of downtown known as Skid Row. The sidewalks have disappeared, buried beneath endless rows of sagging tents and spills from them. Stuffed animals, clothing, a bicycle tire, blankets, condoms, and hypothermic needles. The residents of Skid Row walk in the street, especially the women, some seemingly unaware of the misery all around them. Others dodging cars that speed up just to get through the place. LAPD officer Dion Joseph has been working on these streets for 20 years. He points to a tall woman with blonde gray hair moving at a quick pace. She's headed towards a daytime shelter where it will be much safer for her. Much safer. It's 10:30 a.m. Now, before I go on in reading, I want to say that homelessness in that Skid Row area is definitely a problem. I've been there many times. Like I said, I passed through there many times, and I have seen like many homeless people just hanging out, many people on drugs. And one thing that the Cecil Hotel kind of did, which was very much justice about how not everything about Los Angeles is very glamorous, but that like they pointed out that a lot of people who are homeless, they are on drugs, they are struggling to find places to stay, places to live, and just like it's the real horrors of those realities of those people. Joseph says there's no difference between day and night anymore. Most of the crime happens out of sight in the tents, which have been taken over by the gangs. Whenever I see a new face, especially a woman, I tell them the rules. Don't borrow money from anybody because once you do that, you are bought and paid for, he says. Just like the new condos 5 blocks away, the sidewalks have become expensive real estate. Joseph says the landlords are the gangs. In order to stay on the block, he explains one woman here was forced by Grape Street Crips to give up her entire Social Security check every month. A few feet away, a woman in a bright pink t-shirt is trying to clean up the litter in front of her tent. Deborah Williams says she's trying to keep it like a house. 57-year-old has been here for 5 months, but 5 months too long, she says. I'm trying to get out of here. I know it's too old to be down here, but things happen. They are you or me divided by circumstance, says Georgia Berkovich of the Midnight Mission. A catastrophic illness in the family that depletes their savings, a victim of domestic violence who will rather live on the street than be with their abuser. Financial issues and the lack of affordable housing are increasingly impacting women. Financial issues and a lack of affordable housing are increasingly impacting women. No one ever imagines they'll end up on the streets, Berkovich says. First you will stay with friends, then you will stay with their family, and maybe you wear out your welcome and you say, we'll just stay in our car. Next step, Berkovich says, is usually a shelter, but most of the shelters are full. So you get a tent, but now the drug dealers and pimps have taken over your tent. She continues, now you're doing things you swore you never do. Many of the women on the street pull suitcases behind them. Joyce Robles is one of them. She wears a heavy camouflage jacket on this very hot day. Robles, 51, says her husband passed away about 3 years ago. She has been living on the streets for 2. I've been sexually assaulted. I've been stabbed, she says. It's hard out here for me. You can guess how long people have been here by the anger or despair on their faces, their clothing, the way they walk. But 2 young women who came out of the Downtown Women's Center had none of the telltale signs of homelessness. Kat Greer, a 26-year-old with reddish blonde hair and a flowery cotton blouse, was eager to speak to someone. We just got here from Louisville like 3 months ago, she says. Greer and her partner, who is deaf, thought life would be easier for them in Los Angeles. They were dropped off at the Greyhound station just blocks away. They had never heard of Skid Row. After a couple of days on the street, they were grateful a shelter took them in. We can't find a place to live. There's no way to find a place to live together, she says. They say the shelter is only temporary. One hopes that is true because here, they say with each passing day, leaving is less of an option. All right, so that was pretty much the article, and I really find this article very interesting because it kind of opens up a lot of eyes to like what happens on the streets of Skid Row and just the streets of Los Angeles in general, dealing with the homeless population. Now, I know like Los Angeles is not the only place with a lot of homeless problems or issues like that. I know many cities and states have their issues, their own issues. I remember going out to Denver because I was out there for a conference one time, and I've seen a lot of people that were homeless on the downtown streets of Denver. And it kind of reminded me of just downtown Los Angeles in a lot of ways. I've read another report about how like drugs is definitely a big problem because it is so easy for like the homeless people to get like cheap drugs, which keeps them in that state of lowness and, you know, a low vibration and what have you. The point of all of this is to kind of point out that homelessness could happen to anyone, and this is the real true horror story of what's happening in Los Angeles. Like in the documentary of Cecil Hotel, Elisa Lam had no idea of what type of neighborhood she was walking into. And for somebody who had a lot of psychological issues and she didn't really take her medication, which unfortunately was her demise in the end. And kind of like a semi spoiler alert if you haven't watched the documentary yet, but definitely you should check it out if you're not too shaking my spoilers or anything like that. But it does highlight the problems of Los Angeles and some of the things that we do deal with, which is the main thing is homelessness. The question is like, what has Los Angeles done to fix the problem? There's a lot of projects out there that's trying to fix the homeless issue. And like I mentioned before, there's between 50,000 to 100,000 people reportedly that are homeless. Now, mind you, that's like damn near a whole population for a city or an area really to have that many people. During the pandemic, there was a project that was launched called Project Room Key. Now with that project, it was supposed to be a project where a lot of hotels opened up their rooms for homeless people as a safe place for them just from the virus itself, so that way they could manage to somewhat stay healthy. The problem with that is that a lot of hotels really didn't want to participate in this. In a report that I read, it said that only 4,000 rooms out of the 59,000 reported homeless people were actually roomed in hotels, and the rest were unhoused. That's 36,000 people that are left vulnerable during the pandemic. Just recently, in a report that I read on ABC, that was a lawsuit being held just to kind of like address the homeless issue. They literally held the hearing in Skid Row at the Downtown Women's Center. What was addressed in this hearing was basically that a lot of the political figures in the city and county are not really putting much emphasis on trying to address the homeless issue, because a lot of the politicians are more worried about their image and just like gaining votes and what have you. Also, a lot of landlords that own like high-rise apartments, they are complaining about the homeless population, about like just even having a homeless center a couple of minutes away from their establishment. So there's a lot of issues going on with like branding and just people not really caring about the homeless population. One of the reasons that Project Room Key was a failure, and it was a failure, by the way, the reason why it was a failure was just not only like a lot of people were unhoused, but a lot of hotels did not want to take in the homeless at all because they were worried more about their branding. One of the hotels that was really worried about their branding was the Omni Hotel. They were more worried about the impact it would have on their brand if they were to take in anybody that was homeless. Same thing with the Ritz-Carlton and the JW Marriott. They did not want to mix their guests with anybody else that was homeless. And it was just not those companies that were not interested in taking in the homeless. W Hotel was also an issue too, because they were housing emergency care workers. They also held a pool party that was mostly maskless. Definitely, homelessness is definitely a huge issue in Los Angeles. What kind of solutions can we come up with? I mean, we just gotta like figure out new plans of attack. New plans. I don't have the answers, by the way. I'm not anybody to say like I have all the answers of how we could fix homelessness. I just feel honestly, for me, there should be more housing for homeless people. But here's the double-edged sword for like homelessness and just like why sometimes it just doesn't work to make the housing. How many people are actually trying to seek it? How many homeless people are actually trying to seek shelter? That's the main issue. And sometimes at the end of the day, I mean, it's all complicated. It's nothing black and white. I know a lot of people like to hear black and white answers, but there's no black and white. Everything is in technicolor, you know? So for a lot of homeless people, they have many reasons on why they are probably not trying to seek shelter into like a homeless housing situation, but they rather stay on the streets for one or two reasons. You know, the freedom of doing whatever drugs that they want to do or indulgence that they want to do. Maybe someone is on the run and they don't want to like ID themselves in any way or the other. I don't know. Who knows? It's funny because like thinking about this or talking about like people who are possibly on the run. In the documentary, they do mention the Night Stalker, Rich Ramirez. He actually stayed at the Hotel Cecil. He stayed at the Cecil Hotel, which is interesting because this seems like a hotel he would stay in my honest opinion, just because of its clandestine reputation. I was talking to one of my friends one time about the Rich Ramirez documentary or docuseries, I should say, and talking about how possibly Richard Ramirez was actually homeless just based on how this guy was actually moving, you know, throughout while he was doing all those murders that he was doing. And I mean, it made a lot of sense after watching Cecil Hotel just to hear that this guy literally committed his murders, dumped his bloody clothes into the trash can, and walked through the lobby in his bloody underwear. That's just one example of like why possibly someone who is homeless is probably not really trying to seek any type of help at all. And just that they're probably like literally deep into their own addictions to the point like they really can't get housed anywhere. I mean, shelters get filled up fast. Many families are in those shelters. It's pretty dangerous. And I'm pretty sure they don't want like a super coked out person in these shelters causing problems. So yeah, that's just my take on homelessness in Los Angeles. Hopefully, who knows what kind of like movements are going to be made or what kind of solutions are going to be brought onto the city or just the state in general. But other than that, I am going to go ahead and take another break, you guys. And when I come back, we are going to talk about the Slasher Corner. Be right back. All right. I am back now, and we are at the outro, you guys. And once again, if you are not following me on social media, it is Walterdoom on Instagram, Walterdoom1 on Twitter, and Walterdoom on everything else. And right now, we are in the Slasher Corner. Right now, we are going to talk about our slasher movie of the week, which is Hatchet, which is starring Kane Hodder, Robert Englund, Amara Zaragoza, and Tony Todd. And the plot follows a group of tourists who are in New Orleans in their haunted tour. When they find themselves stranded in the wilderness, their evening of fun and spooks turn into a horrific horrific nightmare, I should say, by the one Victor Crowley. Yeah. This movie was a very interesting movie to watch. It came out in 2006, but I recently watched it like, I want to say last year or the year before. And my God, Victor Crowley, talk about a guy that just looks almost unbeatable. Like if him and Jason were to get into a fight, which I know is played by the same guy, Kane Hodder, that fight would be totally insane, honestly, because Victor Crowley looks very unbeatable. Jason looks like an unbeatable force too. I know there's like 3 Hatchet movies. No, actually there's 4 Hatchet movies because there's a Victor Crowley movie. And yeah, I mean, I've seen all 3. I seen, well, not all three. I seen the first three Hatchet films. I haven't watched Victor Crawley yet. I'll be getting to that pretty soon. Maybe I'll bring back the franchise talk for you guys, and maybe I'll start talking about some different movies, and start ranking them again based on which franchise is better. But I don't know. Do you guys really want to see that? Or I should say, do you guys want to hear that? You know, get a franchise talk about like all the movies that I like, or just like a franchise ranking each time. I don't know. I'm thinking about bringing that back. It sounds fun because it's just me watching a specific franchise and just going through all of its catalog and trying to rank it all out and just see which ones are going to stick out for me on my list. Once again, you guys, it's my list. So if there's a movie that you guys are like, why would you put that on there? Well, let's face it, it's my list. I mean, I'm the one that's choosing it. I like that movie. But anyway, definitely check out Hatchet. It's worth the watch. There's nothing much else I could say. Robert Englund has like a small role in that film, and it's almost hilarious, but he gets killed in the beginning. Tony Todd is on there too, and he has a little hilarious moment also. But other than that, I'm going to sign out for the day, you guys. So yeah, hope to see you guys next week. Once again, if you want to follow me on my social medias, it's Walterdoom on Instagram, Walterdoom1 on Twitter, Walterdoom on everything else where streaming platforms are available. And this has been another episode of Let's Talk About Horror. This is America. Don't let them catch you slipping now. Stay diabolical, people. Peace.